I was sharing a flat with a woman who was doing archaeology and anthropology. And she had a very nice friend, I won't mention his name because he is still around, who was a very good cellist. He was struggling with this, should I keep doing this degree or should I, go where I really want to go and pursue my music? I remember at the time I would have been 28, 29, terribly mature, I knew all about life. And so I said to him, well, look, you've got a fantastic opportunity being here at Cambridge doing a degree. So why don't you just do your degree and then at the end of it, do your cello? Anyway, he didn't take that advice. He went off and pursued his cello. And I thought at the time, really the wrong decision. And then a few years later, I kept hearing him on Radio 3 playing his cello. And he had the most fantastic career.
Hi, Envisionaires. Welcome to the Envisionaire podcast. This is the podcast where we envision living our best lives, ones filled with unlimited possibilities, by exploring everyday topics related to health, wealth, community, and love. This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered to be medical, legal, tax, financial, or other professional advice.
This podcast does not encourage or endorse any illegal activity.
We are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liability that may arise from the information in this podcast.
The views explored in the podcast may not always be those of the host.
On today's episode, we have Beverley Cottrell, who is an amazing woman who I got to meet at an alumni event recently, and she is honestly a one-of-a-kind human being. She has the most incredible growth mindset of anyone I've ever met before. And she has this infectious can-do attitude. I've honestly never experienced this before. Beverley graduated from Cambridge in the 1970s, having studied veterinary medicine. And after practicing as a vet for nearly 20 years, while also being a mom to 4 children, she decided at 57 she wanted to retrain and become a barrister. That is incredible. So at 60 years old, she qualified as a barrister in England and started her new career working in London. After practicing for nearly a decade, she decided to hang up her gown and wig and has now taken up piano and the French language. She has an incredible growth mindset, one that I hope to have over the next few decades. And I honestly think she's one of the most inspiring people I've ever met. And so midway through our dinner together, I knew I had to have her on the podcast because I just wanted to share with you guys her incredible journey. And I know this episode is going to light a fire in many listeners to go and pursue the next iteration of your own journey. So Beverley, a very warm welcome to the Envisionaire podcast. I'm so excited for you to come on to talk about how we can all reinvent ourselves at any age. So why don't we start with what drew you to start studying veterinary medicine at Cambridge?
Okay, so as a child, I had always wanted to be a vet, really because I just loved animals. And I used to go and spend my Saturdays with a local vet, and I just thought it was a great job. Oh. And when I went to school and I had to choose subjects for my A-levels, I went for the careers talk with the headmistress. And she said to me, what do you want to do, Beverley? And I said, well, I want to be a vet. And she said, oh, no, that's no career for you. You're much too small to be a vet. And anyway, a vet really, it's a career for a man. It's not a career for a woman. And you're much better at arts subjects than you are at science subjects. So my advice to you is that you choose for A-levels, English, history, and French. So I thought, okay, well, I was 16, and I wasn't living with my parents at the time. I had no real support. And I just thought, well, she obviously knows better than me. So, very disappointing. I can't be a vet, but, never mind, you don't always get what you want in life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did my arts A levels. I then went back to Australia because I'm an Australian national. I
Yeah.
went back to Australia. I went to university there, and I did an arts degree,
Okay.
which was fabulous. I mean, very interesting. It's always interesting to learn something, isn't it? But, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't what I wanted to be doing. And then when I finished my degree, I thought, well, what am I going to do now, you know, with my arts degree?
Mm.
And there was something inside me that I thought, you know, I really still want to be a vet. And I'm going to give it a go. So,
Wow.
yeah. So at that stage, I suppose I was about 26, maybe. But of course, because I didn't have science A levels, I had to go back right to the beginning and take the science A levels in
Wow.
order to apply for veterinary schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I did those. I did, I think, uh, biology, maths, and chemistry, and then started applying for places at. I had moved back to UK by this stage,
Mm-hmm.
and at that point there were only 6 universities in the UK that offered veterinary medicine, and I applied to them all, and every one of them except Cambridge came back and said, "I'm sorry, you're just too old." So by
What?
this stage, I was 28. Okay, because
Wow.
it's a 6-year degree. So they
Wow.
were thinking, well, you know, we're making this investment in you, and you're not going to have a very long working life because you're already so old. You know, yeah,
It's
blimey, yeah.
ridiculous.
So anyway, Cambridge actually, you know, just had slightly different way of looking at things, and I managed to get an interview.
Mm.
Got an interview with a college that a friend of mine had been to. That was the only reason I applied to that college.
Mm-hmm.
But they were only taking one veterinary student for that
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
And they said to me, "We think you would be better going to Lucy Cavendish College," which, as you know, at the time was catering specifically for mature women.
Yes. 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 Yes.
So I went up to Lucy Cavendish. I absolutely loved it, and I loved them, and they accepted me onto the course. So
Wow.
yeah, so then I
Incredible.
was 6 years at Cambridge doing my vet degree.
And so you were with other like-minded women?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I was the only vet in my year. They only took one person per year to do veterinary
Okay.
medicine, and at the time, college was quite small. There were only about 50 people.
Right.
But they were all doing different subjects, and it was just so interesting, you know, because they'd come from all walks of life. You know, we
Yes.
had an ex-nun, for example. We had a woman who was an entomologist, and she'd worked for the London Pest Unit trying to control cockroaches, you know, and she came to do land economy. It was just fascinating.
Yes.
And absolutely loved the course. You know,
Yes.
I just really threw myself into it and enjoyed it very much, and enjoyed living at Lucy Cavendish with all these just remarkable women, really.
Y- yeah.
Inspiring, very inspiring.
I remember one of the things that I used to love doing, obviously for listeners who don't know, I was also at Cambridge and I was at Lucy Cavendish. So that's
Yeah,
there's a little bit of a connection.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure Lucy has changed over the years.
Yes,
I was one of the last few years when it was all women.
yeah,
So now it's both
mixed.
genders, yeah, all mixed. And so it's or all genders, I should say. And it's great and it's really great, but it's a different experience.
Yes,
I'd never been to a unisex environment. It's at
yeah,
school or university, and it was really incredible. Just because you would and you would sit down at lunch in like the formal hall dinner or formal hall, the hall, and you would have lunch, and you would just meet these incredible women who had this amazing background, like you just said, and who
yeah,
were also studying very specific areas of
yeah,
like niches
mm,
in within academia, and you would just
yeah,
leave that lunch having learned so much and being
yes,
inspired. But yeah, so
yes, absolutely.
mhm.
Yes,
um,
they were very happy years. I really enjoyed that time
oh
at
yeah.
college. Wonderful.
And
Yeah.
when you were on, so again, for people who may not know this, the college system, your college is essentially a place where you like you live, you socialize.
Hmm.
That's where you're kind of, yeah, the pastoral element. And
Hmm.
then you do your course through the university, through the faculty. And was the faculty mostly kind of male and like young males, especially at that time, or was it mixed?
Are you talking about veterinary medicine
Yes.
specifically?
Yeah. Veterinary medicine.
I think it probably in my year it was about half and half.
Okay. So
But it was an interesting year because I think we were about 48 in the year. And of those 48, 11 were mature students. So that means either somebody over 25 like myself, or somebody who had done another degree, which was also like myself.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it wasn't all, I wasn't sort of thrown in with a whole lot of 18-year-olds. We had really quite a diverse year group.
Yeah.
Again, that was fascinating. I mean, I'm still friends with those people. We spent 6 years together.
Yeah, of course. That's
Mm.
incredible.
Mm.
It actually seems like it was more diverse than what I had, because when I was reading law for 3 years, my experience, I felt like I was always the oldest, and most of my friends were actually 18 to like 21.
Yeah.
So I had I had a second youth, I like to call it.
Yeah, well, why not?
Yeah.
And a third.
Yeah, exactly.
It's never too late.
No, it's never too late. Exactly. And that's the ethos of this conversation. So, okay, so let's now move into like, so you were working as a vet, and did you have your own practice, or were you working within a practice?
Well, initially, my first job actually was at a research centre, which is not all that far from us. It was an animal charity, the Animal Health Trust. Sadly, it no longer exists. But it was a wonderful place to be because it was really cutting edge research, and we were doing quite a lot of clinical work. And I specialized in ophthalmology, study of eyes. So it was eyes of all animals. We were in Newmarket, which is a great horse racing center. So we saw a lot of horses, mainly cats and dogs, but, quite a few exotic species. We used to get snow leopards and tigers. And I remember once an elephant came and had to stay overnight, was going to be operated on the next day, and it actually ran amok, destroyed the whole surgery, the operating theatre. I mean, it was...
What did you guys do?
You wouldn't, but, well, I mean, I just, went and did something else, but they all had to clear up.
Wow, that's incredible. And so how long were you doing that?
I did that for 5 years, and then and in the meantime, I was having children, and then I bought my own practice in the village, actually, where we lived.
Okay.
Yeah, which I had worked there as a locum.
Okay.
And the woman who started the practice up was selling it and moving on.
Okay, that's interesting.
So I bought it.
Yeah. And so
that I bought it just before I turned 40.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so was that a big endeavor, or is that a normal practice for vets? Do they normally just kind of eventually go on to like get their own practice and build that out?
I think it varies a lot, actually. I mean, it was different back in the days when I was a new vet, because now the veterinary field is really composed of a lot of corporate entities, and they buy up a lot of veterinary practices. So it's not so usual to have just a particular vet with a particular practice. But back in the day when I bought, it was more common for vets to have their own practices. It was quite small practice.
Right.
But, it was great. It was just fantastic to be the boss. I really enjoyed that.
I was going to say, I feel like there's a theme.
Nobody could tell me what to do. I was telling others.
And so how was that? I mean, you had I remember you mentioned to me before, you had 4 children.
Oh.
Were they all under the age of 5 at one point?
They were, yes. When I bought the practice, I only had 3 children. But we did have 3 under the age of 2, which was quite something. Because I had a daughter and then I had twins.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I thought that was the end of that, but then suddenly there was another one.
So how did you navigate that? I mean, that is, you're a businesswoman, you have your own practice, and you have 4 children now, and a husband. Like
Yeah.
how are you now? How did you navigate that, Beverly?
Well, I mean, when I look back on it, it was complete chaos, really,
Mm-hmm.
because there just weren't enough hours in the day, you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it was difficult, really, in a way, because I felt I was stretching myself really too thinly. Well, obviously I was.
Yeah, of course.
And I felt that I really wasn't doing anything properly. So I wasn't really running the practice properly. I wasn't looking after my children properly. I wasn't, being a part of the family. It was just being pulled in lots of different directions, and it did become difficult to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, I sold the practice. This was my 50th birthday present to myself, was to sell the practice.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I sold it when I was 50. And then I just started to work as a peripatetic vet. I would just go around to other people's practices and work there.
Okay. And then you did that for about 7 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, most people are like, okay, I'm like taking my foot off the gas. I'm ready to like start traveling and just chilling. But you're like, okay, guys, time to start like being a barrister. So how did that come about? I think honestly, I just think this is amazing. So please
Yeah.
tell us.
Well, I suppose two things really sparked that interest in me. One was that I was elected to the council of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, which is our regulatory body, and I became a member of their disciplinary committee, which is, naughty vets come up before the disciplinary committee.
Okay.
And it's run like a proper court.
Right.
And I found it really quite fascinating, the whole, defense, prosecution, cross-examination, examination in chief and so on. And I felt that a lot of the barristers were actually at a disadvantage because they didn't really know how the veterinary world worked.
Right.
So I just thought to myself, if you were dual qualified, it would make things a lot easier.
Right.
So there was that. So I was sort of vaguely thinking, well, it'd be quite fun to do that. And in the meantime, I had a friend in Australia who had been a civil engineer, and he had retrained as a barrister in Australia, in Melbourne.
Wow. Okay.
And he was probably about my age, I suppose. And I sort of thought, well, if he can do it, I'm sure I can do it. Why not? Give it a go. Give it a go. So, so I applied to do the law conversion course, which if you've done any other degree beforehand, you can do the conversion course in a year. I'm sure you understand all this, but
there's some people who are in Canada and North America, so they don't know that. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, and she also didn't really understand how that works. So please, if you can tell us about the conversion.
Right.
Yeah, please do.
So the way it worked back then, I'm not sure if it's still the same now, but the way it worked was that if you had done another degree, you could do a law conversion course in a year, full time. So I thought, well, I'm already 50, 56, 57. I can't mess about too much. So I better do it in the year rather than going part-time and doing it in 2 years.
Yeah.
So it was an enormous amount of work, actually.
Yeah.
And I found it quite difficult because I had in the past always had a very good memory. But with the passing years and, having children and all that sort of baby brain stuff, I couldn't remember things as well as I used to be able to. So I found that I was having to work a lot harder to keep all this stuff in my head. So it was a very hard year, but it was fascinating. I really, really enjoyed it.
That's amazing.
Because, all this stuff about constitutional law, criminal law, land law, all this has been going on without me being remotely aware of how it all functioned.
Yes.
I suddenly thought, gosh, there's a whole part of the world that has been closed off to me, before now.
Yes.
So I found it really, really fascinating. I thought, well, even if I don't go any further than this, at least I've
Yes.
learned something that's really valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like whenever you learn anything in whatever industry it is, it makes sense. But then you think to yourself, how did I not know that this
I
was
know,
happening? Like
I
it's
know,
just, it's wild.
I know,
Um,
I
and
know.
so when you decided to actually make that change,
Yeah.
um, you strike me as the woman, as a sort of woman who um, it really wouldn't matter if people said, that's crazy. What are you doing? But like,
Mm.
did you actually face that sort of the sort of pushback or people having an opinion unsolicited even? And how did you manage that?
Well, actually, in my experience, there's no shortage of people telling you can't do something. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
people always think that it's their right somehow to take you off the track you want to go on and put you on another track, or else just keep you where you are.
Yeah.
So I never used to take much notice, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, really, even at the university where I was doing the conversion course,
Hmm.
the staff would say, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a barrister, so I'll do the bar vocational course, and then I'll try and get pupillage." And they said, "Oh, you'll never get pupillage. You can do the bar vocational course, you can pay a lot of money to do that, but you'll never get pupillage, at your age, da-di-da, Well, okay. I thought, well, at least I'm going to try it. If I don't apply, then I definitely won't get it. But if
Yes.
I do apply, I might get it. And then, that'll be great. So I
Wow.
applied and got it.
Well done.
You
Well
sort
done.
of feel like going back and saying, you told me.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
We'll forward the podcast to them. It's fine.
Yeah.
um, that's sometimes I admire that very much. And I have learned over the years to try to really shut that out. But I used to be a
Yeah.
lot more like it used to really cut deep, especially people around me in my inner circles, if they didn't necessarily agree with that's the people pleaser in me.
Yeah.
How did you not give it notice, or have you always been like that? Have you always just let things slide off your back and you have an opinion, that's fine?
No, I don't think I have always been like that. Actually, I think it takes quite a lot of life experience to sort of build up that confidence.
Hmm.
Because as I told you, when I was at school and I was having the conversation with
Yes.
my headmistress, and she said,
Yes.
"Oh, you'll never be a vet," I accepted it.
Right. Right.
Obviously, 10 years later, I thought, well, no, at least I'm going to try.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because having had a bit of life experience and having seen, other people, there's always people who you admire. There's always role models, aren't there?
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
yeah. So I think it does take a little while to build up that confidence. And of
Yeah.
course, you do. I'm sure everybody suffers from imposter syndrome at some point or other, no
Hmm.
matter how elevated your position is.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good segue into a question that we have from an envisionaire who was very excited that you're coming on. He heard your story and he was like, "Wow, this is so interesting."
Yeah.
So, and touching about imposter syndrome. So he's thinking about changing careers from
Hmm.
law
Hmm.
into music. So
Wow.
very different industry, yes.
Hmm.
But I think he sometimes feels like he's a fraud, like he has this mindset like, I'm a fraud, what am I doing,
Mm.
this
Mm.
feeling of unworthy as well to
Mm.
even endeavor to
Mm.
into that industry. So you have you felt that way? Did you feel that way when you were transitioning into like the barrister, hearing people's opinions? And what would you advise this listener?
Well, I think yes. To answer the question, yes, I did feel like that from time to time, and I think everybody does. Actually, they might not admit it, but I think everybody actually does. Any
Hmm.
reflective person,
Hmm.
does feel from time to time that maybe they're not quite up to it, or they're not doing the job to the degree that it should be done. But I think, those are very negative thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to accept the fact that you are where you are because you have shown that you're capable of being where you are. So you need to take some confidence from that.
Mm.
I mean, there's a difference between being confident and being cocky.
Right.
And there's a difference also between being confident and not recognizing your problem, that, there are issues that you can always make better. You can always improve.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that, recognizing areas where you could be better, I don't think should knock your confidence, because that's all part of building your confidence and working on those areas, and making yourself better. You're never going to be perfect, are you? Anybody?
No, but I think there is sometimes that perfectionism that comes in, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think maybe that's taught at a young age, when children, I don't know, I've been reading a lot about this, and they say like, oh, when you compliment a child on like how smart they are and how, oh, they're such a good, boy or girl, you're so smart, you're so smart. All of a sudden they go into a new environment and they're not the smartest. And all of a sudden they feel so unworthy.
Mm.
And that's maybe a trigger for
Yeah.
yeah, maybe that's one of the things, this idea of like, I have to be the smartest, I have to be the best, I have to be this
Yeah.
for, yeah, to
Yeah.
be deserving
I
of
think
love.
being realistic is very important as well.
Yeah,
It's a
100%.
bit like there's always going to be somebody prettier than you. There's always going to be somebody richer than you. There's always going to be somebody who seems to be having more fun than you. But actually, you need to ground yourself where you are and just be. It's really about being the best that you can be. It's not really about comparing yourself with other
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
in my view.
But
Because,
did you ever compare yourself with others? Have you done that?
well, I have, and I think it's a natural sort of human instinct, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose when I first went to Cambridge to do veterinary medicine, there were some incredibly clever people. And I knew I was never going to be that clever. But by the same token, I was not the most stupid either. And everybody who was there had a right to be there. There's obviously a gradation, isn't there? And some people are just, Nobel Prize winners and so on.
Yes. Yes.
And we can't all be that, but we can
No.
all be, we can all do a good job, and be the best that we can be. And so I have sort of actually tried, over my life not to use someone else as a yardstick,
Mm.
but just to use myself and say, well, am I doing the best job that I can possibly do?
Yeah,
And if I
absolutely.
am, then I'm happy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. That's great advice. And you mentioned this idea about confidence
Yeah,
and trying to, like, how it takes time to build that confidence.
yeah.
And so again, that was another question we had, was how did you find the confidence to start putting yourself out there? So you were with, presumably a lot of, younger people at the beginning of their careers when you're
Hmm.
training to be a barrister, which is a very intellectually arduous
Hmm.
endeavor.
Hmm.
And like, how did you get the confidence to go there? And then when you're going for your pupillage interviews, again, you have to have a lot of confidence, you know um where do you find your confidence?
I don't think there's an easy answer to that one, but I think, as the more life experiences you have, the and assuming they're positive ones, the more confidence building they become.
Hmm.
And again, I think trying to stay on the straight and narrow and not be looking to one side, think, well, they're more clever, or they're
Hmm.
more articulate, or whatever. Just to try and home in on yourself, really,
Yeah.
and just be positive about yourself, and know yourself and know what your strengths are.
Hmm.
don't try and be something that you're not. Okay, because I was never going to be a Nobel Prize winner. I was never going to be a fantastic academic.
Mhm.
But I think I was a good vet.
Yeah,
And I took confidence from that. And I thought, well, okay, that's what I can do, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to be confident about it.
I
And
love it.
same as, being a barrister, I was never going to be, a great silk. But I worked very hard, and I was really conscientious about the cases that I took on, and I knew that I'd given it my best. And of course, you're not going to win every case.
Yeah,
I took confidence from knowing that I had actually done the best I could do.
yeah. Do you know what it sounds like? I've heard of this concept recently, which is something I'm kind of like looking into. Practical optimism.
Yeah.
So I feel like what you've just described kind of embodies that. So it's this
Mm,
idea that you're not talking yourself out of it,
mm,
but you're being practical
mm,
with regards to, what you're working with, kind
yeah.
of where you are in your life. You're self-reflective enough
Mm,
to say, I bring this, I bring these
mm,
skills, I'm worthy, I bring this value,
mm-hmm,
but I don't need to, nor do I actually like really need to be this, top silk or QC or
mm,
KC, if you will.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes I think I go a little bit, it's probably a little bit delusional sometimes.
Mm,
Because in my mind, I would, I'd be like, I'm going to be a KC. I'm definitely going to be a KC.
yeah. Well, you
It's a little bit
probably
delusional.
will. You
No, no.
probably will.
But maybe I like this idea. It's a little bit more of like a kind of, oh yeah, it's a little bit, it's less extreme. And I
Mm,
like it. It's this kind of
mm,
practical optimism, quite like it, rather than, one side or the other, right?
yeah.
Um, so if we had an envisioner who's listening and who is looking into the next iteration,
Mm.
if we could, what is your imparting advice, wisdom you want to share with someone who questions, whether or not to take the next step in their career, their life, whatever age they are?
Well, I think it's very important to do what gives you pleasure in life. I mean, we only get one life. That's my belief anyway. I know some people think we get more than one, but I'm just banking on one. And I really want to make the most of it, So
Hmm.
if there are things that I want to do, I really want to get on and do them and not be put off by people telling you you can't do it or people telling you it's a stupid idea. That just coming back to the questioner, the guy who said he wanted to move from law to music,
Hmm.
reminds me of a story when I was undergraduate at Cambridge. And as I said, that the women at Lucy Cavendish were all doing different subjects. And I was sharing a flat with a woman who was doing archaeology and anthropology. And she had a very nice friend. I won't mention his name because he is still around. Um, who was a very good cellist, and he was struggling with this. Should I keep doing this degree, or should I, go where I really want to go and pursue my music? And I remember at the time I would have been 20, 28, 29, terribly mature. I knew all about life. And so I said to him, well, look, you've got a fantastic opportunity being here at Cambridge doing a degree. So why don't you just do your degree and then at the end of it, do your cello? Anyway,
Hmm.
he didn't take that advice. He went off and pursued his cello. And I thought at the time, really the wrong decision. And then a few years later, I kept hearing him on Radio 3 playing his cello, and he had the
Wow.
most fantastic career.
Wow.
So I thought, okay, well, there you are. You never know what's going to happen. So good for him, actually, for following what
Yeah.
he really wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So just like
So the
listen,
guy
listen.
who wants to move into music, I would say go for it. Yeah.
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 Listen to your intuition. Listen
Yeah.
to that gut instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, well, now we're going to move on to the Envisionaire questionnaire, which is the
Okay.
final part of the of the interview. I think I could talk to you all forever, Beverley. But and so this is a fun feature of the podcast where we ask guests to reflect on their past, present, and future. And
Mhm.
so I would love to ask you some questions. Are you up for this?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
So looking back towards your past, if you could give your 15-year-old self any advice, what would it be?
I would say have more confidence in yourself and do what you want to do. Don't
Mm,
take other people's opinions because they don't know you. They don't know you like you know yourself. So
love
have
that.
more confidence and just be a little bit more forthright.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. And
definitely.
looking at your present, considering your present, if you could have
Mhm.
dinner with anyone in the world, who would it be?
Oh, Barack Obama.
Yes.
I
Same, same. Love him. Love him. I love
just think
Oprah
he's
too, but
fabulous.
oh,
Yeah,
he's
and Michelle
so
can
good.
come too.
Well, exactly. We have to have Michelle. If we're gonna have Obama, we have.
Mm.
I love it. Amazing. What's one goal that you would like to achieve in
Oh,
the next 5 years?
well, I'm preparing at the moment for my piano diploma, so I'd like to get that, pass that. Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
incredible. So
yeah.
how does it work? So is it a like is it one set of exams or is
It's
it
not actually
something?
an exam, it's a performance. It's
Wow.
a performance. So you have to play, well, there's a selection of pieces. And I've got, I think, five pieces that I'm preparing. And then you just have to go in and play them basically. It takes about, I think, between 32 and 35 minutes. So
Wow. And then
it's,
what
I mean, it's
happens
quite,
after?
I'm
Then
not used to playing in front of people. So it's
yeah.
quite nerve-wracking, really. But anyway.
And so what will happen after? Will you become like what is do you have like a certification that you get? What is the title? Sorry, forgive my.
There is a certificate, yeah, you're able to wear a particular type of gown should you ever want to, but yeah.
Beverly, honestly, you cease to amaze me. Wait, and didn't you just take up piano like a few years ago?
Oh no, no, I took up piano as a child.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, I
Okay.
started when I was 8 years old, but then I gave it up when I was 14,
Okay. So you
and
haven't
then I
really
took it
played.
up again a few years ago, about
Oh,
5 years ago.
that's
Mm.
incredible. Okay, so I'm still impressed. Okay, so like, just like Beverly, you're just amazing. Uh, well, thank you so much for being on the Envisioner podcast. If we
Well,
have
thank
any
you. It's been
listeners,
great.
oh, well, it's been our pleasure. If there's any listeners who do want to connect with Beverly, I will put all of her information in the show notes. And yes, please do reach out if you have any questions for her or just want inspiration. But thank you again, Beverly, for everything. And thank you for being on the Envisioner podcast. You've been so great.
Thank
Lots
you.
of love.
Thank you. Bye.
If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you hit subscribe and check out this video here.